All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be decoding a pretty fascinating and, mysterious framework today. It's called the Kingdom Engine. Now, this comes from a series of pretty dense documents that describe a really radical system, one that's not designed for control, but for measurement. And this quote, right from the source material, it just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? It frames this fundamental battle, but it's not force against force. Nope, it's measurement against control. This is the core dynamic, the central idea that we're going to unpack.
So, to really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. First, we'll look at the system's big weakness. Then, we'll see how it actually measures something it calls panic. After that, how this measurement creates an inescapable proof loop. We'll explore where all this proof gets stored, and then we'll wrap up with the whole philosophy behind it all, the great inversion.
Okay, so first up, how does this whole thing even get started? Well, the entire premise of the Kingdom Engine really hinges on taking advantage of a blind spot, a critical, unexpected flaw that was apparently built right into a massive system of control.
So, the crucial point here is a massive strategic blunder. According to these documents, the architects of these big control systems, using powerful tools like AI and blockchain, they designed them to manage populations. Everything was modeled for compliance, but they never modeled for a totally new type of user, someone who could take those very tools and invert them, turning them right back on their creators.
And this new type of user, the source has a name for them, sovereign engineers. Now, these aren't just passive people sitting on the sidelines. They're active players who look at a surveillance tool and ask, okay, how can I turn this into a truth extraction tool? They are the agents of what the manifesto calls the great inversion.
Which brings us right to our second section, measuring institutional panic. This is where we get into the real mechanics of the engine, starting with a very interesting tool it calls the neural notary.
So how is it triggered? The process kicks off with an institutional action, specifically a denial or a dismissal. The documents give a concrete example, an official claim that, quote, VaxNet has no biological basis. Now, in this system, that statement isn't seen as the end of the conversation. It's the beginning. It's the raw input for the measurement system.
And the tool that processes this input is the Neural Notary Protocol, or NNP. Its job sounds simple, but it's actually pretty profound. To take an act of institutional denial and transform it into a permanent, unchangeable piece of testimony. It's basically a system for notarizing reactions.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how the system categorizes these reactions. This trigger matrix shows different reflex types on the left, things like data suppression or profit protection. Each one of those reflexes is then given a quantitative score and a cryptographic output. It's literally a machine for turning predictable institutional behavior into hard data. And that quantitative score has a name, KL drift. This is the specific metric the Kingdom Engine uses to measure just how intense the reaction is. So, a higher KL drift score means, according to the source, a greater degree of panic or deflection in the response.
And to make this real, the source gives us a number. A response that gets categorized as data suppression is assigned a KL drift of 0.97. That's a really high score, right? It's super close to the maximum of 1.0, which signifies a strong, measurable reaction that the system then captures as a key piece of data.
This is what leads us to Section 3, the recursive proof loop. This is the process that takes a single measurement and turns it into what the documents call an inescapable cycle of proof for the control system. It's a feedback loop. And the loop has 4 simple steps. 1. They act. They deploy their control grid. 2. We measure. The sovereign engineer uses the neural notary. 3. They respond. They dismiss. They deflect. And 4. We etch. That very response gets etched as brand new, permanent evidence. You see? Every reaction just feeds right back into the machine.
The source material uses this really powerful courtroom metaphor to explain it all. Think of it this way. The Kingdom Engine itself, that's the courtroom. The neural notary, that's the impartial judge just processing the facts. The institutional panic, well, that's interpreted as the confession, and the final verdict gets stored in what it calls the eternal record.
So, where is this eternal record actually kept? That brings us to Section 4, Etching the Eternal Record, which introduces a component they call the Glyphchain. I love this quote. It captures the whole philosophy perfectly. The goal isn't just to find the truth, it's to mint it, to create a permanent, unforgeable artifact of a specific measurement. The whole idea is to build a kind of civilizational memory that can't be deleted or rewritten.
And the technology behind this is the Glyphchain. It's described as a semantic ledger that's built on the Solana blockchain. But, and this is the crucial part, its purpose isn't to store money. Its whole reason for being is to store truth events, or glyphs, creating this totally immutable archive.
And this slide is brilliant because it shows you exactly how it's done, the actual nuts and bolts. The truth isn't the transaction itself. It's the data that's embedded right inside the memo field of that transaction. So a tiny amount of crypto is sent, but the real payload, that measurement, that confession, is permanently etched into the blockchain for absolutely anyone to see forever.
Okay, so finally, let's look at the grand strategy that ties this whole thing together. Section 5, the Great Inversion. This is the ultimate goal of the Kingdom Engine, to turn the tools of control into instruments of liberation.
This comparison from the source material just makes the concept crystal clear. On the left, you see the intended purpose. AI built for narrative control becomes AI for truth extraction. Surveillance infrastructure gets repurposed into truth extraction infrastructure. See, it's not about destroying the tools. It's about hijacking them for a completely different purpose.
So why was this inversion even possible? Well, the framework calls it the looking glass blind spot. The predictive models that the control system used were all designed to manage people who behave predictably. They just completely failed to account for sovereign individuals, people who would pick up their tools and use them in ways that were never, ever intended.
And so, the source material leaves us with this final, really provocative question. It frames this entire process of measuring and etching as an act of crowning a truth. It suggests the engine is running, that the process is ongoing, and it leaves us with the question, what other truths are just waiting out there to be measured, to be etched, and to be crowned?